The diplomatic station hung in the void like a crystal palace, its gleaming surfaces reflecting the pale light of Kepler 442b below. Ambassador Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck, watching the alien ships arrive in formation. Each vessel was a marvel of advanced engineering, their hulls shimmering with energy fields that human scientists could barely understand. The Zephyrian ships moved with elegant grace, their bioorganic curves pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. The Vorthon vessels were geometric perfection, each surface calculated for maximum efficiency. The Krogar warships looked exactly like what they were, massive instruments of destruction bristling with weapon ports and armor plating. Jake adjusted his simple black diplomatic uniform and checked his chronometer. In 30 minutes, he would sit across from beings who considered humanity nothing more than an annoying pest to be swatted aside. These same aliens had spent the last 3 months systematically cutting off human trade routes, blockading mining operations, and forcing human colonies into isolation. They believed Earth was on the verge of economic collapse. They believed humanity would beg for mercy today. Behind him, Lisa Parker was making final adjustments to her translation device. The young linguistic specialist had spent years studying alien languages, preparing for this moment. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a professional bun, and her green eyes showed no trace of the nervousness Jake knew she must be feeling. Next to her, Commander Ryan Brooks stood at attention in his dress uniform. The military advisor was a veteran of the frontier conflicts, though the aliens knew nothing about those small skirmishes on the edge of human space. The human delegation had arrived 3 days ago aboard the TSS Harmony, a vessel that looked exactly like what the aliens expected from primitive humanity. The ship's hull was scarred and patched, its engines burned with visible chemical flames, and its weapons were basic kinetic projectiles. The alien port authorities had barely bothered to scan it, dismissing it as another example of crude human engineering. They had no idea that the Harmony's true purpose was not transportation, but deception. The station's main conference chamber was a masterpiece of neutral design, with crystalline walls that could display star charts and treaty documents with perfect clarity. Representatives from 3 of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations were already seated when Jake's delegation entered. High Commander Zeltar of the Zephyrian Empire rose slightly from his biochair, his forearms spreading in what passed for a polite greeting among his species. His scaled hide showed patterns of mild amusement, which Jake's briefings had taught him to recognize as condescension. Supreme Coordinator Vex of the Vorthon Collective remained seated, her metallic exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber's lights. The cybernetic implants covering half her face whirred softly as she analyzed the humans with visible disdain. Her species prided themselves on their technological integration, viewing purely biological beings as evolutionary failures. General Thax of the Krogar Federation stood at his full imposing height, nearly 3 meters of muscle and bone armor, his red eyes fixed on Commander Brooks with the predatory stare of a warrior assessing potential prey. The Krogar respected strength above all else, and they saw none in the small human delegation. Jake took his seat at the negotiation table, flanked by Lisa and Ryan. The chamber's translation system hummed to life, converting speech into the various languages present. The opening ceremonies were brief and formal, though Jake noticed how each alien representative managed to include subtle insults about humanity's technological limitations and military weakness. High Commander Zeltar spoke first, his voice carrying the musical tones typical of his species. The translation came through clearly. We gathered today to discuss the terms of human surrender to the superior civilizations of the galaxy. Your species has shown admirable persistence, but the time has come to accept reality. Jake nodded calmly and activated his own translation device. The Terran colonial government appreciates this opportunity for dialogue. We come seeking a peaceful resolution to the current tensions between our peoples. General Thax's laughter was a deep rumble that made the chamber walls vibrate. Tensions? Is that what you call it when your pathetic mining ships flee at the first sight of our patrol vessels? Your colonies cry for supplies while your so-called fleet hides behind asteroid belts, added Supreme Coordinator Vex, her mechanical voice devoid of emotion. We have seen your ships, human. Crude chemical rockets and metal hulls. Your most advanced weapons are kinetic projectiles that our defensive fields can stop with ease. Commander Brooks remained perfectly still, his expression neutral despite the mockery. Jake had briefed him extensively on maintaining the deception. Every reaction, every response had been carefully planned to reinforce the aliens' misconceptions about human capabilities. Lisa leaned forward slightly, her voice soft but clear. Perhaps we could begin by discussing the specific terms you have in mind. High Commander Zeltar's hide patterns shifted to deep satisfaction. He activated a holographic display showing human space divided into sectors. These mining rights will be transferred to Zephyrian oversight. Your agricultural worlds will supply our bioships with necessary organic compounds. Your industrial capacity, limited though it may be, will serve our manufacturing needs. The terms were harsh, as expected. Humanity would become a client species, providing raw materials and basic labor while the three alien civilizations shared the benefits. Jake listened carefully, occasionally asking for clarification on minor points, always appearing reasonable and resigned to humanity's fate. Your acceptance of these terms shows wisdom, Supreme Coordinator Vex stated. Many primitive species attempt futile resistance before accepting the inevitable. Your pragmatism may allow for more favorable treatment in the future. Jake pulled out a datapad and began reviewing the preliminary agreement. The aliens watched with growing satisfaction as he made notes and calculations. They saw a defeated ambassador trying to salvage what little he could for his doomed species. General Thax leaned back in his chair, his massive frame radiating confidence. I confess surprise at human cooperation. Our intelligence suggested your species possessed a stubborn streak that would require more convincing. We've learned from observation of your conflicts with other species, Jake replied honestly. Resistance without hope of victory serves no purpose. The aliens exchanged glances of approval. This was proceeding exactly as they had planned. Humanity would join the ranks of vassal species without requiring the expense of a military campaign. The humans seemed to understand their position perfectly. As the session continued, Jake maintained his diplomatic composure while making careful note of every detail. The aliens' arrogance was complete, their certainty absolute. They had no idea that every word spoken in this chamber was being recorded and analyzed by human intelligence services throughout the galaxy. They had no concept that their own communications networks had been penetrated months ago. When the session finally adjourned for the day, the alien delegates were in excellent spirits. High Commander Zeltar was already planning victory celebrations on his homeworld. Supreme Coordinator Vex was calculating the economic benefits of human resources. General Thax was disappointed there would be no glorious battle to add to his military record. Jake returned to his quarters aboard the Harmony, where he immediately began composing his daily report. The message would travel through seemingly normal communication channels to reach Earth's leadership. To any alien monitor, it would appear to be routine diplomatic correspondence. In reality, it was a signal that Phase 1 of Operation Shepherd was proceeding perfectly. The sheep were ready for shearing. They had no idea that the shepherds were already in position. The second day of negotiations began with the aliens in even better spirits than before. High Commander Zeltar had received approval from his homeworld to proceed with the annexation plans. Supreme Coordinator Vex had already begun calculating resource extraction quotas. General Thax sat at the table with barely concealed boredom, wishing his people could simply take what they wanted through conquest instead of these tedious diplomatic procedures. Jake Morrison maintained his composed demeanor as the aliens presented their detailed terms. Each demand was more outrageous than the last, but he responded with careful consideration and occasional requests for minor modifications. The aliens interpreted his measured responses as the desperate negotiations of a defeated species trying to salvage dignity from disaster. Commander, Ryan Brooks had been unusually quiet during the morning session. When High Commander Zeltar commented on human military capabilities, Ryan finally spoke up. His voice carried the resigned tone of a professional soldier who knew when he was outmatched. He pulled out a basic datapad and began sharing what appeared to be classified information about human fleet composition. The aliens leaned forward with interest as Ryan displayed crude schematics of human warships. The vessels looked exactly as primitive as they had expected. Chemical fusion drives provided basic propulsion. Kinetic weapons fired simple metal projectiles. Defensive systems consisted of basic armor plating and primitive deflector screens. The largest human dreadnought barely measured 400 meters in length. Our total active fleet consists of approximately 60 vessels, Ryan admitted, his voice carefully modulated to sound defeated. Most are patrol boats and cargo escorts. We have perhaps a dozen ships that could be considered true warships by galactic standards. General Thax's eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction. 60 ships against the combined fleets of 3 major civilizations. The humans were even weaker than intelligence reports had suggested. His own personal battle group numbered more vessels than the entire human fleet. Supreme Coordinator Vex processed the tactical data with mechanical precision. Her cybernetic implants calculated engagement scenarios and determined that human resistance would last approximately 4 hours against a coordinated assault. The mathematical certainty pleased her analytical nature. As the session progressed, General Thax found himself growing curious about human defensive strategies. He had conquered dozens of worlds, and each species had its own approach to warfare. Some relied on technological superiority, others on numerical advantage. A few had attempted clever tactics or desperate gambits. All had ultimately failed against Krogar military might. When the afternoon break arrived, General Thax approached Commander Brooks with casual interest. "Your species shows unusual calm in the face of overwhelming odds," the massive alien observed. "Most conquered peoples display more emotional distress." Ryan met the general's gaze steadily. "Military training teaches acceptance of tactical realities. Panic serves no useful purpose when facing superior force." "Spoken like a true warrior," General Thax replied with something approaching respect. "Perhaps your species deserves better than complete subjugation. Strong fighters should serve strong leaders, not waste away in labor camps." The conversation gave General Thax an idea. His military doctrine emphasized testing enemy capabilities before committing to major operations. A small probe mission would satisfy his curiosity about human defenses while providing useful intelligence for future occupation forces. The humans were clearly defeated already, so there would be no real risk involved. That evening, General Thax sent encrypted orders to his fleet commander. 3 Krogar dreadnoughts would conduct a routine patrol mission near human space. They would observe human defensive responses and evaluate the quality of their military personnel. The mission was classified as a training exercise with minimal combat probability. The target selected was New Boston, a human mining colony in the Outer Rim. Intelligence reports indicated the system contained approximately 50,000 colonists and basic orbital facilities. Defensive forces were estimated at 1 or 2 patrol vessels at most. The mission would provide valuable data while demonstrating Krogar strength to any watching human observers. Captain Steve Collins received the proximity alerts while reviewing supply reports in his quarters aboard the TCS Defender. The Colonial Defense ship had been patrolling the New Boston system for 6 months, protecting mining operations and civilian traffic from the occasional pirate raid. It was quiet duty that suited his crew well after their previous assignment. In the frontier conflicts, Steve made his way to the bridge where Lieutenant Commander Beth Torres was already analyzing the sensor contacts. 3 massive signatures were approaching from hyperspace, moving in standard military formation. The energy readings indicated heavy cruisers or possibly dreadnoughts. Their approach vector suggested they were not simply passing through the system. "IFF signals?" Steve asked as he settled into the captain's chair. "Negative on friendly identification," Beth replied. "Configuration matches Krogar warship profiles from the database. Estimated displacement 12,000 tons each." Steve felt a familiar calm settle over him as he processed the tactical situation. 3 enemy warships against his single vessel. Standard protocol called for immediate retreat and notification of colonial authority. However, the Defender had been positioned in this system for a specific purpose, and that purpose was not defense of mining operations. The 3 Krogar dreadnoughts dropped out of hyperspace with the elegant precision of a practiced fleet. Their hulls gleamed with the dark metal that made their ships nearly invisible against the void. Weapon ports began cycling through activation sequences as the massive vessels took up aggressive patrol formation. "Captain," Steve activated his communication system and transmitted on standard diplomatic frequencies. His voice was calm and professional as he identified his vessel and requested the Krogar ship state their intentions in human space. The response came back within minutes, broadcast on all frequencies to ensure every human in the system could hear. "Human vessel, you are in the presence of the Krogar 3rd Battle Squadron. Your pathetic colonies now belong to the Krogar Federation. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded." Steve exchanged glances with his bridge crew. Lieutenant Commander Torres raised one eyebrow in an expression of mild amusement. The tactical officer, Lieutenant Jack Wilson, was actually smiling slightly. The communications officer, Ensign Maria Santos, had her hand positioned over her console ready to transmit. "Krogar vessels, this is Captain Collins of the Terran colonial ship Defender," Steve replied, his tone remaining perfectly professional. "You have entered human space without authorization and made hostile declarations against civilian populations. You are ordered to withdraw immediately or face the consequences of your actions." The response from the Krogar flagship was immediate laughter, broadcast across all frequencies. General Thax's voice carried clearly through the translation system, dripping with contempt and amusement. "One small human ship threatens 3 Krogar dreadnoughts? Your courage is admirable, but your intelligence is questionable. We will demonstrate the futility of human resistance." The lead Krogar vessel powered up its primary weapons and fired a warning shot across the Defender's bow. The energy blast lit up the darkness of space with brilliant orange fire, passing close enough to the human ship that everyone on the bridge could see it through the main viewer. Steve Collins smiled slightly and nodded to Ensign Santos. She pressed a single button on her communications console, sending a brief coded message through standard diplomatic channels. To any monitoring alien, it would appear to be a routine distress signal requesting assistance from nearby human vessels. In reality, it was something quite different. The diplomatic station hummed with quiet activity as the third day of negotiations began. Ambassador Jake Morrison sat across from the alien delegates, reviewing the latest treaty modifications with practiced patience. The aliens had spent the morning refining their demands, adding new restrictions on human movement and trade. Each addition made their victory seem more complete and satisfying. High Commander Zeltar was particularly pleased with the mining rights agreements. His bioships would feast on the organic compounds from human agricultural worlds for generations. Supreme Coordinator Vex had calculated resource flows down to the last decimal point, ensuring maximum efficiency in the coming exploitation. General Thax seemed restless, occasionally checking his personal communicator for updates from his fleet. Lisa Parker noticed the general's distraction first. Her linguistic training had taught her to observe nonverbal communication patterns, and the massive Krogar warrior was displaying signs of anticipation. Something was happening that the humans were not being told about, but Jake had prepared them for this possibility. The morning session proceeded smoothly until the station's communication officer approached General Thax with a priority message. The Krogar commander read the report quickly, his red eyes brightening with satisfaction. He looked up at the human delegation with renewed confidence before addressing his fellow aliens. "My colleagues, I have excellent news from the frontier. Our probe mission to human space has proceeded exactly as predicted. 3 of our vessels encountered a human warship defending one of their mining colonies. The engagement confirmed our intelligence assessments completely." Commander Ryan Brooks leaned forward slightly, his expression carefully neutral. "What kind of engagement, General?" "Nothing that could be called a true battle," General Thax replied with amusement. "One small human vessel attempted to threaten 3 of our dreadnoughts. When we fired a warning shot, they transmitted a distress signal calling for assistance. We are currently waiting to see what pathetic reinforcements they can muster." Jake Morrison felt a familiar calm settle over him as he processed this information. The probe had arrived at New Boston exactly as intelligence had predicted. Captain Collins would be following protocol perfectly, which meant the next phase of Operation Shepherd was about to begin. He maintained his diplomatic composure while making a mental note to commend the timing. "Perhaps we could review the territorial boundaries while we wait for news from your patrol," Jake suggested calmly. "It would be useful to establish clear administrative zones for the transition period." The aliens were happy to discuss their plans for dividing human space among themselves. They spread holographic maps across the conference table, pointing out which systems would serve which purposes. Mining operations here, agricultural zones there. Industrial centers converted to supply alien fleets. The casual efficiency with which they planned humanity's subjugation was almost impressive. 2 hours passed before the next communication arrived for General Thax. The Krogar commander's aide approached, with obvious urgency, carrying a sealed message pod that indicated highest priority traffic. General Thax opened the communication and began reading, his expression shifting from confidence to confusion to something approaching concern. "Is there a problem, General?" Supreme Coordinator Vex inquired, her mechanical voice registering curiosity. General Thax read the message again before responding. "My ships report unusual sensor readings in the new Boston system. They are detecting massive energy signatures approaching from multiple vectors. The humans appear to have more vessels in the area than our intelligence suggested." High Commander Zeltar's hide pattern shifted to mild interest. "How many vessels are we discussing? A dozen patrol boats? 24 mining ships pressed into service? The report mentions contact signatures consistent with heavy cruisers or possibly dreadnoughts," General Thax replied slowly. "The energy readings are significantly higher than expected for human technology." Ambassador Morrison maintained his careful expression of concern. "General, I hope your commanders understand that any civilian vessels in the area are simply trying to evacuate the colony. Our ships carry families and workers, not military personnel." "Of course," General Thax agreed, though his voice carried less certainty than before. "However, these energy signatures suggest something more significant than civilian evacuation craft." The aliens returned to their territorial discussions, but Jake could sense their growing unease. The probe mission was supposed to confirm human weakness, not reveal unexpected strength. Their carefully planned victory was encountering its first discordant note. Another hour passed before the station's main communication array received a priority signal from the new Boston system. The message was transmitted on standard diplomatic frequencies, ensuring that everyone in the conference chamber could hear it clearly. The voice that came through the speakers was calm, professional, and completely confident. "Diplomatic Station Kepler 4482b. This is Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Terran Navy ship Retribution. I am requesting immediate permission to dock and address the ongoing negotiations. My fleet is currently securing the new Boston system and ensuring the safety of all vessels in the area." The silence in the conference chamber was absolute. General Thax stared at his communicator as if it had betrayed him. High Commander Zeltar's hide patterns shifted through colors that indicated deep confusion. Supreme Coordinator Vex's mechanical implants whirred frantically as she processed this unexpected development. Jake Morrison cleared his throat gently. "Admiral Sullivan has my authorization to represent human interest in these negotiations. I believe her presence would be valuable for all parties involved." "Admiral?" General Thax repeated, his voice carrying disbelief. "Humans have admirals. Your species lacks the military structure to support flag officers." "I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding," High Commander Zeltar added, his musical voice strained. "Perhaps this individual has adopted an honorary title to intimidate our patrol vessels." The station's traffic control system requested landing clearance confirmation from the diplomatic staff. Jake nodded to Lisa Parker, who transmitted the appropriate authorizations. Within minutes, they received acknowledgement that Admiral Sullivan's shuttle was approaching the station. As they waited, the aliens tried to maintain their composure, but Jake could see the cracks beginning to show. General Thax was receiving constant updates from his ships in the new Boston system, each message adding to his obvious confusion. The report spoke of massive human vessels emerging from what had appeared to be empty space, their energy signatures beyond anything in Krogar tactical databases. The first sign of Admiral Sullivan's arrival was not visual, but auditory. A low, thrumming sound began to vibrate through the station's hull, so deep it was felt more than heard. The aliens looked around nervously as the sound grew stronger, a harmonic resonance that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "What is that noise?" Supreme Coordinator Vex demanded, her sensors unable to identify the source. Commander Brooks answered with the same calm professionalism he had maintained throughout the negotiations. "That would be the sound of human warship engines, Coordinator. Controlled singularity drives create a distinctive harmonic pattern." The aliens stared at him in shock. Singularity drives were theoretical technology that even their most advanced civilizations had been unable to master. The idea that primitive humans had not only developed such systems but deployed them operationally was beyond their comprehension. The thrumming sound grew louder as more ships arrived, each adding its voice to the growing chorus. Through the station's observation ports, the aliens could see lights beginning to appear in the darkness of space. Not the crude chemical flames they expected from human ships, but clean, brilliant points of light that spoke of technology far beyond their understanding. Jake Morrison stood slowly and walked to the main viewport. In the distance, he could see the silhouettes of vessels that dwarfed anything in the alien fleets. The TNS Retribution hung in space like a moving mountain, its kilometers of hull bristling with weapons systems that the aliens could not even identify. "Gentlemen," Jake said quietly, turning back to face the stunned alien delegates, "I believe it's time we had an honest conversation about the terms of surrender." Admiral Kate Sullivan entered the diplomatic chamber with the confident stride of someone who held all the important cards in a very dangerous game. Her dress uniform was immaculate, bearing insignia that the aliens were only now beginning to understand represented real military authority. Behind her walked Marine Colonel Danny Wright, his presence radiating the quiet menace of a professional soldier, and Chief Engineer Amy Foster, whose technical expertise would soon prove more valuable than any weapon. The alien delegates had arranged themselves around the conference table in what they hoped appeared to be confident positions, but Jake Morrison could see the tension in their postures. General Thax kept glancing at his communication device, waiting for updates from his ships that were not coming. High Commander Zeltar's hide patterns had shifted to colors indicating deep uncertainty. Supreme Coordinator Vex's mechanical implants were working overtime, processing data that did not match any of their previous calculations about human capabilities. Admiral Sullivan took her seat at the table with calm authority, her gray eyes surveying each alien representative with the measured assessment of a predator, evaluating potential threats. When she spoke, her voice carried the absolute confidence of someone who knew exactly how powerful the forces under her command truly were. "Gentlemen, I believe there have been some fundamental misunderstandings about the nature of these negotiations," she began, her tone remaining perfectly diplomatic despite the words she was speaking. "Ambassador Morrison has done excellent work laying the groundwork, but I think it's time we clarified exactly what is being discussed here." General Thax leaned forward aggressively, his massive frame tensing for confrontation. "Admiral, your impressive fleet display does not change the tactical reality. 3 civilizations against 1 isolated species. Your ships may be larger than expected, but numbers still matter in warfare." Admiral Sullivan smiled with the patience of someone explaining simple mathematics to a confused child. "General, I appreciate your confidence, but I'm afraid your intelligence assessments have been somewhat incomplete. Chief Foster, would you please share our current fleet disposition with our guests?" Amy Foster activated a holographic display that filled the center of the conference table. The 3-dimensional map showed the local galactic region with startling clarity, marking the positions of military forces throughout known space. What the aliens saw made their previous confidence evaporate like morning mist. Hundreds of contact markers appeared throughout the display, each representing significant military assets. Human fleet concentrations were positioned at every major hyperspace junction, every critical resource system, every strategic choke point that controlled interstellar commerce. The aliens realized they were looking at a military deployment that had been years in the making. "These positions represent our current readiness status," Admiral Sullivan explained calmly. "Each marker indicates a battle group consisting of 12 to 20 vessels, depending on local tactical requirements. Our deep space reconnaissance has been monitoring your fleet movements for the past 6 months, ensuring optimal positioning for all possible scenarios." Supreme Coordinator Vex's mechanical voice carried a new note of uncertainty. "This deployment pattern would require industrial capacity far beyond our estimates of human manufacturing capability. Our intelligence indicated your species possessed perhaps a dozen shipyards." Chief Engineer Foster highlighted sections of the display showing asteroid belts and outer system installations. "Your intelligence was focused on our visible infrastructure, Coordinator. Human engineering has always favored distributed manufacturing and hidden facilities. We've been building ships in hollowed asteroids and concealed bases throughout the Outer Rim for over 2 decades. The revelation hit the aliens like a physical blow. Their entire strategic assessment had been based on observations of human space that showed only what humanity wanted them to see. The primitive mining colonies and basic trade routes had been carefully maintained facades, while the real work of military preparation took place in locations the aliens never thought to examine." "High Commander?" Zeltar's musical voice carried disbelief as he studied the tactical display. "The energy requirements alone for such an operation would exceed the output of your known power generation facilities." Our calculations show human energy production at barely sufficient levels for your visible infrastructure. Admiral Sullivan nodded to Amy Foster again, who expanded the display to show power generation sites throughout human space. The aliens saw fusion reactors hidden in planetary cores, solar collection arrays disguised as communication satellites, and most shocking of all, controlled black hole generators that provided virtually unlimited energy to human industrial complexes. Human science has been advancing rapidly during our period of apparent isolation, Admiral Sullivan explained. While your civilizations focused on perfecting existing technologies, we have been developing entirely new approaches to power generation, weapon systems, and defensive capabilities. Colonel Wright spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the flat authority of a man who had seen too much combat. Our tactical doctrine has been built around the assumption that we would eventually face multiple enemy civilizations simultaneously. Every system, every weapon, every strategic plan has been designed with overwhelming numerical disadvantage in mind. General Thax was receiving constant updates from his ships in the new Boston system, each message adding to his growing horror. His 3 dreadnoughts, which had seemed so powerful when confronting a single human vessel, were now surrounded by a human fleet that outgunned them by orders of magnitude. The energy readings from human weapon systems indicated destructive capabilities that could crack planets. Our ships in your territory report weapon signatures beyond our understanding, General Thax admitted reluctantly. Our sensors indicate directed energy systems that should not be possible with any known technology. Amy Foster highlighted weapon specifications on the display with obvious pride. Human weapons development has focused on efficiency and overwhelming force multiplication. Our primary ship-mounted systems channel controlled stellar material through magnetic containment fields. The result is essentially artificial solar flares delivered with pinpoint accuracy. The aliens stared at the technical readouts with mounting disbelief. Weapons that could deliver the power of a star, defensive systems that could deflect entire asteroid fields, ships powered by controlled black holes that could operate for centuries without refueling. Everything they thought they knew about human capabilities had been deliberately crafted deception. Supreme Coordinator Vex processed the implications with mechanical precision. The economic cost of such development would require resource allocation beyond the capacity of your known worlds. The materials alone would exceed the output of your visible mining operations by several thousand%. Admiral Sullivan's smile carried genuine amusement as she gestured toward the display showing human territory. Coordinator, you've been observing human space for months without realizing that most of what you've been watching is completely artificial. Our visible colonies and mining operations exist primarily to maintain the illusion of limited capability, while our real infrastructure operates in locations your sensors cannot detect. The revelation was complete and devastating. The aliens had spent months planning the conquest of what they believed was a primitive, resource-limited species, struggling with basic interstellar technology. Instead, they had been preparing to attack a civilization that had already surpassed them in every meaningful category of military capability. Jake Morrison stood slowly and activated his own communication device. Admiral, I believe our guests would benefit from seeing the current tactical situation in their home systems. The display shifted to show the 3 alien homeworlds, each surrounded by what appeared to be routine civilian traffic. Amy Foster enhanced the sensor resolution, revealing that the civilian vessels were actually human warships operating under sophisticated stealth systems. Every major alien military installation was under direct observation by forces that could destroy them within minutes. Gentlemen, Admiral Sullivan said quietly, her voice carrying absolute finality, I believe it's time we discuss the terms under which your civilizations will surrender to the Terran Federation. The silence in the diplomatic chamber stretched for long minutes as the alien delegates processed the complete reversal of their situation. General Thax stared at the tactical display showing human forces positioned throughout his empire's territory, his red eyes reflecting a mixture of shock and grudging professional respect. High Commander Zeltar's hide patterns had shifted to colors that Jake Morrison's briefings had taught him, indicated complete submission. Supreme Coordinator, Vex's mechanical implants whirred frantically as she recalculated every strategic assessment her people had made about human capabilities. Admiral Sullivan allowed the silence to continue, understanding that the aliens needed time to fully comprehend their new reality. The sound of human warship engines continued to thrum through the station's hull, a constant reminder of the overwhelming force now surrounding them. Through the observation ports, more human vessels continued to arrive, each adding its voice to the growing chorus of power that filled the void around the diplomatic station. High Commander Zeltar was the first to speak, his musical voice carrying the defeated tone of someone who had accepted inevitable reality. Admiral Sullivan, the Zephyrian Empire acknowledges that our assessment of human capabilities was fundamentally flawed. We are prepared to discuss terms for peaceful coexistence under human leadership. General Thax struggled with the concepts of surrender and submission, concepts that went against every instinct in his warrior culture. However, his military training also taught him to recognize tactical impossibility when confronted with it. His 3 ships in the new Boston system were completely outgunned by forces that could destroy them without visible effort. His homeworld was under observation by stealth vessels that had penetrated their most secure defensive perimeters. The Krogar Federation values strength above all else, General Thax said slowly, each word carefully chosen. We have been outmaneuvered by superior strategy and overwhelmed by superior technology. Honor demands that we acknowledge human dominance and request terms that allow our people to serve under worthy leadership. Supreme Coordinator Vex processed the situation with mechanical efficiency. Her cybernetic implants had calculated every possible scenario and reached the same conclusion through pure mathematical analysis. Resistance would result in complete annihilation. Cooperation offered the possibility of survival and even prosperity under human guidance. The Vorthan Collective recognizes the logical superiority of human civilization, she stated with characteristic directness. We request integration into human governmental structures under terms that maximize efficiency and mutual benefit for all parties involved. Admiral? Sullivan nodded with satisfaction as she observed the aliens' complete capitulation. The months of careful planning and deception had achieved their intended result without requiring actual military action. Humanity had won the most complete victory possible, one achieved through superior intelligence and preparation, rather than through destruction and conquest. Your wisdom in recognizing the new reality is appreciated, Admiral Sullivan replied. Humanity has no desire to rule through oppression, or to destroy civilizations that can contribute to galactic prosperity. We offer partnership rather than servitude, cooperation rather than conquest. Jake Morrison stepped forward to present the actual terms that had been prepared long before the negotiations began. The document he activated on the holographic display was completely different from the surrender terms the aliens had been discussing for the past 3 days. These were the Articles of Federation for a new galactic government with humanity as the guiding force. The terms were surprisingly generous considering the complete nature of human victory. Existing alien governments would maintain local authority over their internal affairs. Trade relationships would continue with fair exchange rates and mutual benefit. Cultural traditions would be respected and protected. Military forces would be integrated into a unified defense structure designed to protect all member civilizations from external threats. In exchange, the alien civilizations would provide their technological expertise in areas where human development lagged behind. Zephyrian bioengineering would help terraform marginal worlds for human colonization. Vorthan cybernetic technology would enhance human industrial capabilities. Krogar metallurgy would strengthen human defensive systems. The most important requirement was complete transparency in military and technological development. No member civilization would maintain hidden weapons programs or secret military installations. Intelligence sharing would be mandatory to prevent future conflicts and ensure mutual security. General Thax reviewed the military integration requirements with growing respect for human strategic thinking. Rather than dismantling alien forces, the plan called for combined training exercises and joint operations that would gradually blend the different military traditions into a unified force. Krogar warrior culture would be preserved while being directed toward galactic defense rather than conquest. High Commander Zeltar found the cultural protection clauses particularly reassuring. Human leadership apparently understood that diverse civilizations contributed more value when their unique characteristics were maintained rather than suppressed. The bioships of his people would continue to serve their traditional role while also supporting the expanding human colonial network. Supreme Coordinator. Vex was impressed by the economic efficiency of the proposed federation. Human organizational methods combined with alien technological specializations would create productivity levels that exceeded what any single civilization could achieve alone. The mathematical projections showed exponential growth in prosperity for all member species. The signing ceremony was conducted with appropriate dignity despite the unusual circumstances. Each alien delegate affixed their species' official seal to the Federation Charter, formally ending their civilization's independence while beginning their membership in something far greater than they had ever imagined possible. Admiral Sullivan transmitted the completion codes to human forces throughout the galaxy, weapons powered down, stealth systems deactivated, and defensive postures shifted to patrol status. The immediate crisis was over, but the real work of building a unified galactic civilization was just beginning. Captain Steve Collins received the stand-down orders while still facing the 3 Krogar dreadnoughts in the New Boston system. The alien vessels had remained frozen in position since the arrival of the human fleet, their commanders apparently too shocked to respond to the tactical situation. Steve opened communication channels to the Krogar ships and offered assistance with repairs and resupply, beginning the process of transforming former enemies into future allies. Colonel Wright established communication links with military commanders throughout the 3 alien empires, beginning the complex process of coordination that would eventually forge their separate forces into a unified galactic defense network. The initial resistance he expected never materialized, as alien officers recognized the professional competence of their new human counterparts. Amy Foster began sharing human technological advances with alien engineering teams, carefully selecting improvements that would enhance their capabilities without revealing the most sensitive military secrets. The controlled release of human innovations would gradually uplift allied civilizations while maintaining human strategic advantages. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the new Federation capital station, watching ships from 4 different civilizations working together to construct the infrastructure of galactic government. The sound of human warship engines had become a familiar background note throughout known space, no longer threatening, but reassuring. It was the sound of protection, of strength used in service of peace rather than conquest. The galaxy had a new order, one built on the foundation of human strategic patience and overwhelming preparation. The aliens who had once laughed at human weakness now served willingly under human leadership, having learned the hard way that appearances could be devastatingly deceptive. Humanity had achieved its greatest victory not through war, but through the careful application of superior intelligence, in service of a peace that would last for generations.